The massive airplanes you travel in, the helicopters you see soaring above, the private jets, and the chartered planes. Have you ever wondered whose mind created all of this? Who actually invented the very first flying machine? Wouldn't you love to know the real story? If you are ready to find out, let's dive right into this video. But before we take off, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another incredible story like this one.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the most incredible technological leaps in human history. We are going to answer exactly who created the airplane and how two bicycle mechanics solved a truly deadly puzzle that had completely baffled humanity since, well, the dawn of time. It's an amazing story of mechanics over scientists and keen observation over sheer force.
For centuries, people looked up at the birds and just dreamed of joining them. But that dream, it was honestly a graveyard of broken machines and lost lives. So many brilliant inventors threw everything they had at this problem. Many tried, many failed, and tragically, many died. The sky was just this unforgiving environment, and for the longest time, it seemed like a totally impossible barrier.
So how exactly did two mechanics finally unlock it? When we ask who created the airplane, the answer doesn't lead us to some heavily funded university lab or a top-secret military project. Nope, it points straight to a small bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio. Brothers Wilbur and Orville Wright weren't formally trained scientists. They were just mechanics with a massive dream, and they took a totally radical approach that literally changed human history forever. And here is where the entire paradigm shifts. While the absolute greatest minds of the era were totally obsessed with strapping massive, heavy engines onto these flying contraptions, the Wright brothers realized a fundamental truth. Power means absolutely nothing if your machine just instantly crashes. The old-school approach was all about forcing an object through the air with brute strength. But the Wrights? They focused entirely on equilibrium and three-axis control. They wanted the ability to actually steer up, down, left, right, and roll side to side. They needed to balance in the sky.
This brilliant shift in thinking actually came straight from nature. Wilbur spent countless hours just watching birds fly. He noticed a crucial detail, perfectly summed up in his own words. It does not just flap its wings to stay up, it tilts them. That is the secret: control. He saw that a bird doesn't use brute strength to fly. It dynamically adjusts to the wind. That single paradigm-shifting insight basically drove their entire engineering philosophy from day one.
And Orville was completely on the same page. He saw exactly what Wilbur was seeing. Their ultimate goal wasn't just to build a flying engine so they could launch something off the ground. As Orville pointed out, they needed a machine that a pilot could steer perfectly in the sky. They were obsessed with mastering this incredibly complex puzzle of balance, knowing that if they could crack the code on steering, they could figure out the engine part later.
So in 1899, they kicked off this grueling, real-world journey. To test all their theories safely, they needed the absolute perfect environment, eventually landing on the steady winds and soft sand of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. They went from testing kites to full-on gliders, and for 3 years between 1900 and 1902, they put their control theories to the ultimate test in those harsh coastal winds, all leading up to the grand finale in 1903, finally adding power.
Now, during those early glider tests, they managed to develop what they called a wing warping system. Basically, this was a mechanical way to twist the wings using a set of cradles that the pilot operated. By warping the wing, the glider would physically lean right into the wind to balance, doing exactly what Wilbur had watched the birds do. It finally gave a pilot the ability to dynamically balance mid-flight. True three-axis control.
But then they hit a total brick wall. For 3 long years, they faced endless frustration. Their gliders just weren't generating enough lift, and they kept crashing. Why? Well, they figured out something pretty shocking. The data was wrong. The established scientific tables they were relying on, data created by the pioneers who came before them, were just fundamentally flawed. The math literally did not work. But what is so fascinating here is how they reacted to that failure. Instead of throwing their hands up, they basically said, "All right, fine, we'll just do the math ourselves." Right there in their Dayton bicycle shop, they built a custom wind tunnel. They meticulously tested hundreds of miniature wing shapes. Through sheer grit and mechanical genius, these two bike mechanics actually became the first men to calculate the true accurate physics of flight.
By 1903, they finally had the correct wing shapes and the control system totally dialed in. It was time for power. But of course, a new problem popped up.
Literally, no manufacturer could build an engine light enough and strong enough for them. So step one, they just asked their bike shop mechanic, Charlie Taylor, to cast a custom aluminum engine block right there in the shop. No big deal, right? And step two, they carved their own incredibly efficient propellers. They brilliantly realized propellers shouldn't be shaped like flat paddles. They needed to be rotating wings that sliced horizontally through the air to generate thrust.
All of this relentless innovation finally came together on December 17, 1903. Back out on those freezing, windy dunes of Kitty Hawk, their revolutionary biplane was ready to go. Enter the Wright Flyer. It was this delicate but completely brilliant machine, built out of spruce wood and tightly stretched muslin cloth, powered by that custom 12-horsepower engine they built back in Ohio. Human history was literally sitting right there on the launching rail.
The tension that morning must have been absolutely electric. The brothers just casually flipped a coin to see who'd get the honor of flying first, and Orville won. He climbed in, lying totally flat on his stomach on the lower wing to cut down on drag. Yelling over the roar of that 12-horsepower motor, he called out, "The engine is warmed up. The propeller chains are turning. Are you ready to release the wire, Wilbur?" You can just feel the adrenaline peaking.
Wilbur yelled right back, "Ready, brother! Keep your hands steady on the controls. Do not oversteer, just keep her level." As the restraining wire snapped loose, the machine violently accelerated down the wooden track. Wilbur was actually running right alongside it, physically holding the wingtip just to keep this incredibly fragile machine steady against the freezing headwind.
And then, the ultimate payoff for years of total obsession. Fighting the stiff wind, the machine actually lifted off the rail. This wasn't a glide, it wasn't a little hop. It was a sustained, powered, and controlled flight. With Orville actively steering the thing, he was really flying.
That monumental first flight, the very first time a heavier-than-air powered machine achieved controlled flight with a pilot aboard, lasted exactly 12 seconds.
12 seconds. And it covered just 120 feet. To put that into perspective for you, that entire first flight was actually shorter than the wingspan of a modern Boeing 747. But the numbers really don't capture the magic of the moment. In that brief, 12-second flash of time over a tiny stretch of sand, the age of aviation was officially born. They had just proven the impossible was possible.
And it is wild how incredibly fast they mastered their own invention. That exact same day, they kept taking turns. By their fourth flight, Wilbur was up, and he managed to keep the flyer in the air for an astonishing 59 seconds, covering an incredible 852 feet. In just a matter of hours, they had multiplied their distance by 7.
At the end of that historic day, Wilbur reflected that, sure, the flights were clumsy and they were short, but honestly, none of that mattered. These two mechanics from Ohio, with no elite scientific degrees and zero massive government funding, definitively proved to the world that humanity could conquer the sky. When people ask who created the airplane, the answer is simple: the guys who just rolled up their sleeves and did it themselves.
By prioritizing the secret of control over just raw, unbridled power, and by having the absolute guts to challenge flawed scientific data, the Wright brothers unlocked the sky for all of us. They didn't just build a machine, they literally built an entirely new era of human connection and travel, which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought for you to take away today. What seemingly impossible puzzle in your own life or work might you be able to solve simply by fundamentally shifting your perspective?